My name is Marion Miller. I'm 22 years old, and for most of my life, people have only ever seen one version of my story, the polite one. When someone asks why I don't talk to my family anymore, I usually give them a soft diplomatic lie like, "Oh, we drifted apart," or "It was time to focus on myself." But the real answer is nothing that gentle. The real answer lives in a single weekend, my college graduation, and a Facebook post that felt like it split me straight down the middle. I come from a family where favoritism isn't whispered about behind closed doors. It's practically a performance, a spotlight permanently angled toward my younger sister Cassidy. Growing up, I used to think there was something wrong with me for noticing. I'd tell myself I was being dramatic, oversensitive, reading too far into things, but I wasn't. I was just the child they never bothered to center. Cassidy, the golden girl, bright, charming, effortlessly, adored, fit perfectly into whatever mold my parents had dreamed up. She sparkled in all the ways they liked cheer squad school pageants, parties, a social media feed full of perfect. And I didn't. I was quieter, more independent. I worked 2 part-time jobs, took evening classes, earned honors, while balancing exhaustion on my back, and somehow I was still invisible in my own family. The favoritism started small. It always does. Cassidy got a brand new phone every Christmas. I got her cracked hand-me-downs with dead pixels and sticky buttons. She could stay out until 11 p.m. I was grounded for being 10 minutes late. She got piano lessons, voice lessons, art classes, anything she showed the slightest interest in. I got told to be grateful the lights are on. Eventually, I stopped arguing, stopped expecting fairness, stopped hoping. But despite everything, a tiny part of me believed my graduation would be different. That maybe just once they would look at me and actually see me. I was the first in the family to finish a 4-year degree. I had worked myself raw for it. I let myself imagine the moment they'd show up with flowers cheering proud. I should have known better, but hope makes fools out of all of us. I told them the date, months ahead of time, sent reminders, even offered to help book a hotel. My grandma, God bless her, called me every week leading up to it. "We're so proud of you, Marion," she'd say. "This is your moment." She meant it. She always did. 2 years earlier, when Cassidy graduated high school, my parents threw her a celebration that looked suspiciously like a wedding reception. Fancy banquet hall, DJ floral archway, even cupcakes with her face printed on edible paper. They ended the night by announcing they were sending her on a week-long trip to Greece. "You've earned this, sweetheart," my mom had said, brushing Cassidy's hair like she was royalty. I clapped and smiled like a good daughter, but sitting in the back seat afterward watching streetlights smear across the car window, I wondered if they'd ever treat me with even half that enthusiasm. My graduation arrived on a warm Saturday morning. I didn't expect Greece or a banquet. I just wanted them there. I wore the same suit I used for internship interviews, pressed until the seams felt sharp. My best friend Micah drove in from another state. My roommate's parents brought flowers. They said no one should graduate without flowers, and the kindness of that nearly broke me. I scanned the crowd from the stage, heart pounding, and saw exactly one familiar face. Grandma, waving like she was trying to flag down a plane. My parents and Cassidy nowhere. I tried to swallow the disappointment, tried to reason with myself that maybe something came up. Maybe they were running late. Maybe they'd call, but they didn't. No text, no excuse, nothing. After the ceremony, I found Grandma waiting by the fountain, holding a tiny gift bag and a Tupperware container. "It's your favorite," she said softly, lifting the lid to reveal her famous chicken spaghetti. The smell alone nearly made me cry. "They said they were busy," she added, eyes downcast. "Your father mentioned work, but I'm not sure that's the whole story." We sat on a bench. She handed me a graduation card, one of those glittery generic ones you grab last minute at a gas station. Inside, scribbled handwriting read, "Congrats, Colton, Mom and Dad." Except my name isn't Colton. It's Marion. 22 years, and they still wrote the wrong name. Cassidy didn't even sign it. I laughed, a hollow, stunned sound that tasted like disbelief more than humor. Grandma's eyes shone with quiet pain, and I hugged her tight. Grateful she was there, heartbroken. She was the only one. When I got home, I took a photo of the card and the leftover chicken spaghetti, posted it to my private story with the caption, "Graduation feast." Grandma hesitated before leaving. "You sure you're okay, baby?" I nodded. I'm used to it. But I wasn't, not anymore. That night, I lay awake, replaying everything, every slight, every silence, every time I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. God, it did. It felt like being punched by indifference. I kept thinking, If not now, then when? When will they ever care? The next morning, my phone buzzed. A voicemail and a text from my aunt, my dad's sister. We weren't close, but she was always kind. Sweetheart, you might want to see what your dad posted on Facebook. My stomach flipped. Some part of me already knew this was going to hurt. I opened Facebook. That was the moment everything snapped. 2 crisp photos, a caption dripping with praise. Photo 1, Cassidy, standing in front of the same banquet hall they'd rented for her high school graduation. Makeup perfect, hair curled. A banner behind her read, "Congratulations, Cassidy, future nurse." She wasn't graduating anything, just finishing her second year of college. Photo 2, my parents on either side of her beaming. Cassidy holding a ticket envelope and a glittery Greek flag. They were sending her back to Greece again. The caption read, "Couldn't be prouder of our girl. Surprise trip to Greece round 2. You make this family proud every single day." No mention of me. No hint that their daughter had graduated college literally yesterday. Aunt Janet commented, "Didn't Marion just graduate yesterday?" Dad replied, "She had a small ceremony, but Cassidy's accomplishments are once in a lifetime." My mom added Marion prefers to keep things low-key. Low-key. I stared until the screen dimmed. The ringing in my ears drowned out everything. Micah found me like that, frozen. "What happened?" he asked. I handed him my phone. He read, shook his head. "Wow. Just wow." "They misspelled my name on the card," I whispered. He set his coffee down carefully like it might break. "You okay, Marion?" For the first time in my life, I didn't lie. "No," I said. "Not really." And something inside me cracked in a way I knew would never mend the same again. The day after the Facebook post felt like moving through fog, thick, heavy, and clinging to my skin no matter how many times I tried to shake it off. I kept replaying the images in my mind. Cassidy beaming my parents, glowing beside her, the glittering Greek flag, another trip, like some twisted trophy for accomplishments she didn't even earn. And beneath it all, there was that caption. Our girl. Our brightest light. Like I was a shadow they had finally managed to erase. I didn't text them that night. They didn't text me. The silence was almost impressive in its cruelty, like they'd taken the time to consider the moment and still chosen to ignore it. The next morning, my phone lit up with Grandma's name. Her voice was soft, cautious. "Careful, baby." "I saw the post." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, me too." A pause stretched between us, gentle but aching. "You know it's not you, right?" she said. "This isn't about you not being enough. It's about them not seeing what's right in front of them." I wanted to believe her, but the truth stung too deeply. "I know I managed, though," my voice wobbled. "But it still hurts." She didn't try to fix it. Grandma never did that. She understood that some wounds needed space, not solutions. She simply breathed with me until my heartbeat steadied. But as soon as we hung up, the ache returned heavier than before. The entire week passed with nothing from my parents. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement that they'd missed a milestone in my life while celebrating something that wasn't even a real accomplishment for Cassidy. It was like my graduation had slipped out of their minds, or worse, like it had never been there at all. By Thursday, I found myself scrolling Instagram just to confirm the worst. Of course, Cassidy had posted again this time, lounging poolside in Greece, a glass of wine in her hand, sunglasses tilted just enough to show her perfectly curled eyelashes. The caption read, "Celebrating hard work and support that actually means something. Family. First." It wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I handed my phone to Micah across the kitchen counter. "She's taunting me," I said. He didn't even need a second read. "Yeah, it's like they're daring you to react." But I didn't. Not on social media, not publicly. I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of watching me explode. But inside, something shifted. A quiet seismic crack. A pressure that had been building for years suddenly rearranged itself, settling into something sharper, anger, with clarity at its core. That weekend, I couldn't stop replaying our childhood. Memory after memory rose to the surface like bruises I'd forgotten were there. The time Cassidy broke my laptop and my parents said it was my fault for leaving it where she could reach it. The time I got into my first choice university and my mom suggested I defer so it wouldn't take attention away from Cassidy's senior year. The birthdays they missed. The successes they overlooked. The way they poured love into one daughter and expected the other to feed herself from scraps. I had been disappearing for years, and I hadn't even noticed how small they'd made me until I tried to step out of the shadows. The following Tuesday, my phone buzzed. "Mom." Hey, honey, sorry we missed your ceremony. We were super swamped with Cassidy's finals and planning her celebration. Hope it went well. Dad said Grandma was there, so at least you weren't alone. At least you weren't alone. It was the kind of sentence that should have come with a knife warning. There was no apology, no accountability, no shame, just a flimsy justification wrapped in faux warmth. Micah leaned over my shoulder, reading the text as my jaw clenched. Don't respond, he said quietly. I won't, and I meant it. 2 days later, Grandma invited me to dinner. Her kitchen was tiny, cozy, the kind of space that smelled like lemon chicken and memories. Sunlight filtered through her lace curtains, scattering little patterns across the table where she'd set out mashed potatoes and warm rolls. She studied me carefully as I sat down. I know things feel heavy right now, she said, passing me a plate. But you don't have to carry it by yourself. I swallowed a knot of emotion. I don't know how to deal with it. She nodded slowly. Do you remember what I told you when you were little, that people show you who they are not, with their words, but with their actions? I remember I whispered. Well, sweetheart, she said, setting her fork aside, they've shown you. And now you get to decide what to do with that. Her words stuck to my ribs like something warm and necessary. When I left her house that night, I cried in the car before I even turned the engine on. The next morning, Cassidy called. My phone buzzed insistently across the nightstand. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail that chirped through the speaker while I brushed my hair in the bathroom. Hey, so Mom and Dad said you've been distant, just checking in. Also, I need a huge favor. My friend Jess is applying to your university and she wants someone to talk to about the program. Can I give her your number? No congratulations. No sorry we missed your graduation. Just straight to the ask. I deleted the voicemail. That night, Dad texted. You've been very quiet lately. We know you're upset, but sulking isn't helpful. Cassidy's party wasn't meant to be a slight. She's had a heavier workload than you, and we wanted to give her extra motivation. Extra motivation for finishing sophomore year, while I graduated college. I typed out 10 different replies, deleted all of them. Instead, I opened my laptop. If they weren't going to hear me, then I needed to hear myself. I began typing, not a rant, not a revenge post, just a list. A truth list. Every memory, every slight, every time I'd swallowed my voice to keep the peace. The missed birthdays, the misused praise, the Venmo stings, the comments that cut deeper than they knew. Page after page poured out of me. And when the list was complete, I felt lighter, not healed, but clearer. Because now I had proof, not for them, but for myself, that this wasn't in my head. That I hadn't imagined the years of small wounds. That I wasn't ungrateful or dramatic. I was simply done being invisible. 2 days later, the betrayal came loud and ridiculous. Micah and I were grabbing lunch when my phone buzzed with a Venmo notification. Cassidy sent you $10 with a note. For the card we forgot to get you, LOL. Micah looked over my shoulder. Are you serious? I stared at the screen. No, I whispered. They're serious. That night I sat in my apartment with the lights off, just the glow of my laptop illuminating the room. I reopened Facebook, staring at their smiles, their celebration the way I didn't exist in any frame. I wasn't just forgotten. I was erased. But not for long. Because in that moment, breath fogging the window rain, stitching down the glass, I knew exactly what needed to come next. Not revenge. Truth. I didn't go home that summer. Not for a weekend, not for dinner, not even for a quick hello. The thought of stepping back into that house made my chest tighten like the walls themselves might whisper, "You don't matter here." So when Micah's parents offered me their guest room just for a few weeks while I figured out my next steps, I accepted with a gratitude that felt almost embarrassing. I wasn't used to being welcomed without strings. I wasn't used to being wanted. Their house felt like the opposite of my parents' warm lived-in, with mismatched mugs in the cabinet and a cat that immediately decided my lap was its new favorite place. Micah's mom asked me what I wanted for dinner, as if my preferences mattered. His dad asked about my career plans, not out of judgment, but out of genuine interest. The first night they toasted me for graduating me, not Micah and I nearly cried into my mashed potatoes. I didn't realize until that moment how starved I had been for such a simple thing, someone caring. This, I thought, is what support feels like. Not performance, not obligation, just presence. During those weeks, I updated my resume, reorganized my portfolio, and stayed up late, researching jobs in cities I'd never let myself consider. Chicago, Boston, San Diego, places with skylines and possibilities, places where no one would know me as Cassidy's sister. And then one afternoon, an email appeared in my inbox. We'd like to schedule an interview for the data analyst position in Austin. Austin. Warm, weird, electric Austin. The job wasn't glamorous, entry-level long hours, probably too many spreadsheets, but it was something. Something big enough for me to imagine a life outside the gravity of my family. Micah drove me to the airport the morning of the interview. I was jittery, clutching my carry-on like a shield. You nervous? He teased lightly. Terrified, I admitted, but the good kind. He grinned. Go make them regret overlooking you. I didn't say it out loud, but part of me already knew I was never going back to the version of myself who waited for my parents' approval. The interview went better than I expected. The hiring manager, Dev, was sharp but kind. He asked real questions, treated my answers with respect, and gave me the distinct impression that he saw me, my potential, my capability not as a placeholder or backup plan, but as someone who could become important. It was disorienting. When the recruiter called a week later to say, "We'd love to have you join the team, Marion," I had to sit down. My hands shook. I mouthed the word, really like a child discovering a new world. 3 weeks later, I moved to Austin. Small apartment, creaky floors, no air conditioning for the first 2 days. But it was mine. Every box I unpacked felt symbolic, like shedding a layer of skin that never fit right. I didn't tell my parents I'd moved. They didn't ask. Their silence stretched like a canyon between us, deepening by the day. Meanwhile, Cassidy kept posting from Greece, posing on yachts, laughing under string lights, sipping wine in linen outfits. Mom commented under every photo, "Our shining star. You make us so proud, sweetheart. Look at that smile." Each comment was a reminder. Their world revolved around her. Mine didn't exist. I wasn't forgotten by accident. I was removed on purpose. Work became my refuge. Entry level meant tedious tasks at first, but I didn't mind. There was something comforting about spreadsheets, orderly, logical, indifferent to favoritism. Effort in, results out. Simple. I stayed late, asked questions, took notes like my life depended on it. And people noticed. One afternoon, Dev stopped by my desk. "You've got a good head for patterns," he said. "You ever thought about analytics strategy?" I blinked. I've considered it, but consider it harder. He smirked. "You've got a future here." No one in my family had ever said anything like that to me. The jolt of validation hit somewhere deep in my chest. I signed up for online courses, Python, SQL, visualization techniques. I spent nights practicing learning, pushing myself. Slowly, my work changed. I got invited to meetings included in discussions. 6 months in, I was running monthly performance presentations. After one meeting, Dev pulled me aside. "That storyboard was the best I've seen from someone at your level. I want you to mentor one of our new hires." Mentor? Me? I nodded, stunned. "Yeah, I'd love to." On Christmas, Micah's family invited me again. His mom knitted me a scarf. His dad made hot chocolate from scratch. I laughed more that night than I had in years. I kept waiting for my phone to buzz, for my parents to call, to ask where I was. But they didn't. Grandma called, though. She always did. "I miss you, baby," she said, her voice soft. "I miss you, too." "Your mama said you've been busy with work," she added carefully. "But she didn't mention where you're living now?" "That's because she doesn't know." Silence. Then, "Marion, don't let them make you feel small. You're not small. You're one of the biggest-hearted people I know." I held the phone to my chest for a minute after she hung up, letting her words settle like warm sand. I didn't need their approval. I had built something better, something real. Then, in March, out of nowhere, I received a DM from Cassidy. A long one. At first glance, it looked sweet, apologetic even. But I'd grown up with Cassidy long enough to read between the lines. "I'm sorry if you felt left out. I didn't realize how it must have looked. Mom and Dad can be a lot sometimes." But then the real reason surfaced. "Anyway, my friend Jess is applying to UT Austin for grad school. I think she could benefit from your insight since you're there." There it was, the pattern. Apology just deep enough to seem kind, followed immediately by an ask. No accountability, no ownership, no true remorse. "Just need." I didn't reply. Instead, I kept building my life. I ran in the mornings, cooked real meals, made friends who liked me. For me, not the version my family tolerated. I even dated a little. For the first time in my life, I wasn't holding my breath. But deep down, beneath the growth, beneath the calm, there was a part of me that still wanted something I had never gotten. Closure. Not revenge, not humiliation, not a dramatic confrontation. Just truth. Out in the open. Undeniable. Permanent. I didn't know it then, but that desire was the spark that would soon ignite everything. The idea came quietly at first. should more of a whisper than a thought, a tug somewhere inside my chest that said, "You don't owe them silence anymore." I ignored it for days, maybe weeks. I told myself I was too busy, too healed, too detached to look backward. But every time Cassidy posted something new, smiling in Greece, clinking glasses, celebrating family support, the whisper grew sharper. It wasn't anger driving me. It wasn't bitterness. It was exhaustion. I had spent my whole life being edited out of my own story. Maybe it was time to write myself back in. One Sunday afternoon, after cleaning my entire apartment just to distract myself, I sat at my desk and opened a blank page. No title, no outline, just space. My hands hovered over the keyboard for a long moment. Then they started moving. I wrote about the 2 graduations, Cassidy's extravagant banquet hall, and my lonely ceremony, where the only person who showed up brought chicken spaghetti in a Tupperware. I wrote about the misspelled card, the forgotten signature, the wrong name, written by people who had raised me. I wrote about the Venmo, the comments, the Facebook caption that erased me entirely. I didn't name my parents. I didn't insult them. I didn't embellish. I just told the truth, the full truth. When I finished, I sat back and read it. My chest tightened, not with sadness, but with clarity. There it was, years of silence condensed into something real and undeniable, something I could point to and say, "This is why." I titled it "The Graduation That Never Happened." Then, with a deep breath, I posted it on a mid-size Reddit forum about family estrangement and favoritism. No hashtags, no flourish, just a story released into the world like a bird that had been pacing its cage too long. I cross-posted a shorter version to my private Instagram 300 followers, most of whom didn't even know my family dynamics. I turned off my phone, grabbed my coat, and went to get tacos with Micah. We talked about work, about his terrible fantasy football team, about nothing that mattered. I didn't bring up the post, he didn't ask. It was enough just to breathe. The next morning, my alarm buzzed at 7. I reached for my phone, and the screen lit up so bright I thought it was glitching. Dozens of notifications. My heart kicked. Micah, still half asleep in the living room, poked his head into my doorway. Marion, I think something happened." Something had. The post had exploded. It started when someone on Twitter screenshotted the story and wrote, "Wow, read this." Then someone else retweeted it. Then a third person added, "This hit hard." Within hours, it had thousands of likes, hundreds of comments, people pouring into my DMs with messages like, "Thank you. This is my story too. I thought I was the only one who felt invisible in my family. I cried reading this in my car." Some of the messages were long confessions, stories of brothers favored over sisters, daughters, overshadowed by sons, children, overlooked because they were the strong one. I read each one slowly, letting the weight of them settle over me. It was overwhelming, but not in a bad way. More like finding a room full of people who spoke a language I'd been trying to translate alone my whole life. Not everyone was supportive, of course. A handful of trolls appeared. "Cry harder. You're jealous. Get over it." But for once, their words didn't pierce. They bounced off like rubber. Their voices didn't matter, because for the first time ever, mine did. Later that afternoon, as I made tea in my kitchen, I noticed an unread email at the top of my inbox. "Grandma." I opened it expecting worry or confusion. Instead, I found something entirely different. "I read your story, Marion. Every word rang true. I'm sorry I didn't do more when you were younger. I always thought love would balance things out. But sometimes silence becomes complicity. I'm so proud of you for telling your truth." My throat tightened. I sat down on the floor of my kitchen and cried, not because I was sad, but because for the first time, someone inside the family had said, "Yes, I saw it too." Her email didn't heal everything, but it rebuilt something inside me, something that had cracked years ago. A few days later, another message appeared. The tone was different, formal, controlled, performative. "Cassidy. Wow, you really made us sound like monsters, LOL. Mom's freaking out. Aunt Janet and Uncle Rob saw it, and everyone's gossiping. Anyway, I'm assuming this is still about you being mad about graduation. If it makes you feel better, Mom says she's open to making it up to you this summer. Maybe we can throw a party or something. No hard feelings. Also, can Jess still reach out about UT? She's super nervous." I read it 3 times. It was almost impressive how Cassidy managed to avoid accountability while still asking for a favor. The subtext was loud. "Fix this. Clean it up. Make Mom stop looking bad. Help my friend." I didn't respond. Not yet. Because suddenly something else clicked into place. This wasn't the moment to argue. This wasn't the moment to lash out. This wasn't even about revenge. This was about truth, and truth deserves to be complete. That night, I gathered my laptop, a cup of chamomile tea, and every screenshot I had quietly saved over the years. Messages, photos, comments, even the misspelled graduation card. Not to smear them, not to humiliate them, but to document, to build a record that couldn't be twisted, edited, or explained away. Then a thought struck me, something I hadn't considered in years. I opened a dusty folder on my computer and found it the login to my old high school blog, a forgotten corner of the internet where I used to write book reviews and study tips. The domain was still active. Empty, untouched, waiting. Perfect. I created a new post, this time with names. Not sensational, not vindictive, just factual, chronological truth supported by receipts. I wrote about both graduations. I uploaded photos, Cassidy's banquet, the Grease announcement, my Tupperware dinner outside the venue. I wrote about the Venmo, the voicemail, the years of silence. I titled it, Being the Invisible Daughter. A graduation story. It wasn't meant to go viral. It wasn't meant to cause chaos. It was meant to exist. A place where if anyone ever asked, "Why don't you talk to your family?" I could simply reply, "Here, read this." When I finished, I sent the link to exactly one person, Aunt Janet. Not because I wanted drama, but because Aunt Janet was the quiet backbone of our entire family grapevine. One text from her traveled through the family tree faster than wildfire. Within a week, I began receiving texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. "Marion, I always wondered why they treated you differently. That blog hit me so hard. My mom's been talking about it nonstop. I'm sorry. I wish I'd known." And then the fallout reached its source. My mother emailed me. "I can't believe you'd air our family business like this. That was private. I'm ashamed of how you're handling this. We were going to make it up to you eventually, but now you've humiliated your sister and your father. I hope it was worth it." There was no apology, no self-reflection, just shame projected outward. I stared at the email for a long time. Then I laughed. For once, the shame wasn't mine to carry anymore. The email from my mother should have shattered me. A year earlier, it would have. I would have reread her words over and over, dissecting every shard of disappointment, trying to find some hidden sliver of love inside the blame. But now, sitting in my quiet Austin apartment with the hum of the ceiling fan above me, I felt something different, something unfamiliar. I felt free. Not triumphant, not vengeful, just unburdened. Because for the first time, I wasn't the one scrambling to prove my worth. They were the ones scrambling to defend their behavior. The fallout, however, didn't stop with Mom's email. 2 days later, Cassidy messaged again, this time with a tone so polished it could have belonged to a PR intern. "Hey, Marion, I know things got heated. I hope you know none of that was personal. Mom's just stressed. I want us to get along. Maybe we can talk when you come home. Also, Jess is still really hoping to chat about UT." There it was again, the pattern. A thin layer of empathy laid over the same ask. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because Cassidy wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the version of me she'd grown used to, the silent one, the agreeable one, the one who would always sacrifice her own discomfort to keep the peace. That Marion was gone. Micah and I grabbed drinks that Friday. We sat on a rooftop bar overlooking downtown Austin, the city glowing like a constellation that decided to settle on Earth. He clinked his glass against mine. "So he said, studying me. What now? You gonna drop a nuke?" I shook my head. "No." "No," he raised an eyebrow. "After all that." "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I want a mirror." He looked confused. I didn't blame him. I didn't want to hurt my family. I wanted them to see what they had done, not through rage, not through theatrics, but through undeniable truth. Truth is louder than any explosion. And Cassidy's friend Jess, funny how fate works. A few days earlier, I received an email from UT Austin's admissions office. They invited me to speak on a student panel for prospective graduate students, as an alum, as someone who had built something out of nothing, as someone competent enough to guide others, and who was applying to UT Austin's grad program. Jess. The universe had a sense of humor. I promised myself I wouldn't sabotage Jess. She wasn't the villain. But I also wasn't going to hand out shortcuts. If she asked how to stand out on her application, I'd tell her the truth. Be honest. Be authentic. Don't let other people fight your battles for you. Maybe Cassidy would understand the message. Maybe she wouldn't. It wasn't my job to interpret it for her anymore. Meanwhile, quietly, steadily, my life continued growing around me. At work, I was thriving, something I never thought I'd feel. Numbers made sense. Patterns called to me. Dev kept giving me opportunities, pushing me, trusting me in ways no one in my family ever had. I started mentoring a new hire named Chloe, who reminded me of myself at that age, eager, careful, hoping not to disappoint. One afternoon, after a tough presentation, she looked at me with wide eyes and whispered, "I don't know how you stay so calm." I almost laughed. Calm wasn't something I was born with. It was something I built brick by brick every time my parents ignored me, every time they handed the spotlight to someone else. I stay calm, I told her, because I learned the hard way that other people's approval can't be the foundation for your worth. Her eyes softened. She understood more than I expected. On quiet evenings, I kept journaling. Not out of pain anymore, but out of clarity. I cooked meals from scratch. I took long walks along Town Lake. I let myself imagine futures that once felt impossible. Slowly, I realized something huge. I wasn't living in reaction to my family anymore. I was living for myself. But there was still one part of my old life I couldn't let go of. Grandma. She had been the only constant, the only one who showed up, who cooked for me, who supported me without asking for anything in return. And I knew she didn't have much. Her arthritis had gotten worse. Her garden was overgrown. The roof on her house had been leaking for years. I wanted to do something real for her, something meaningful, something that wasn't about proving anything to anyone. So I made a decision. I cut every non-essential expense. No eating out, no new clothes, no impulse buys. I picked up freelance data projects on weekends. I tracked every dollar like it was a seed I was planting for the future. My goal: pay off her mortgage. Not for show, not to post online, not to compare with Cassidy's Greece trips. Just because she deserved to breathe without financial fear. Month after month, I worked like I had a fire inside me. No, not a fire, a purpose. And with every deposit, every payment, every step closer to the goal, the girl my family had dismissed seemed to fade further into the distance. I wasn't invisible anymore, not to myself. When the day finally came, the day the last transfer went through, I stared at the confirmation screen for a long time. Relief washed over me so deeply I felt it in my bones. I drove home that weekend with a manila folder on the passenger seat. It held the paperwork, the proof, the freedom. Grandma was sitting in her sunroom when I arrived, surrounded by roses she hadn't been able to trim in years. When I handed her the folder, she squinted at it, then at me confused. "Sweetheart, what is this?" "It's your house," I said softly. "Paid in full." For a moment, she didn't move. Then her fingers trembled as she touched the paperwork as if afraid it might disappear. Tears welled in her eyes, real tears, full-bodied, trembling, unrestrained. "Oh, Marion," she whispered. "I thought I'd die before this burden lifted." I sat beside her, taking her frail hand in mine. "I did it because you were the only one who ever treated me like I mattered." She pressed her forehead against mine, her voice breaking. "You always mattered, baby. Sometimes people just don't know how to show it. Sometimes they don't want to." We sat in silence, the kind that feels sacred. But later, when she went to bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time in years, I stayed awake in her living room, listening to the creak of the old fan and the hum of crickets outside. I knew what came next. The truth was complete. The story had been written. Now it was time to deliver the final message. Not a scream, not a threat, not revenge. A mirror. And the people who had ignored me for years were finally going to see themselves in it. I waited 3 days after paying off Grandma's mortgage before doing anything else. Not because I was unsure, not because I felt guilty. I waited because I wanted to be calm, clear-eyed, steady. Revenge depends on anger. Truth depends on timing. On the 4th evening, I sat in her old living room. The room with the creaky ceiling fan, the faded floral couch, the sun-faded photos lining the mantel, and opened my laptop. The glow of the screen washed over the walls like moonlight. This time I wasn't writing a blog post. I wasn't documenting anything. I was simply sending one email. Subject line: a graduation gift of my own. I typed slowly with intention. No rage, no theatrics, just truth distilled into clarity. "Hi, Mom, Dad, and Cassidy. I figured it was time to return the favor. You gave Cassidy 2 graduation parties, 2 trips to Greece, and a full banquet celebration. You gave me a card with my name spelled wrong and leftovers in a microwave. So this year I gave myself a gift. I bought something. Her name is still on the mailbox, but she doesn't owe a dime anymore. The house is hers, now paid in full. You know, the only person who came to my graduation. She doesn't have to worry about her mortgage again. Just thought you'd like to know what a quiet daughter does with her life when no one's looking." No response needed. I'm not interested in apologies. I just wanted you to understand that the invisible daughter you ignored made herself seen. Marion. I read it 3 times before I hit send. Then I closed my laptop, leaned back on the creaky couch, and breathed. I didn't expect a reply, but I got 3. Cassidy responded first, of course she did. 20 minutes later. Her message was a familiar cocktail of vague remorse and emotional sleight of hand. Marion, I don't know what to say. That was so kind of you to do for Grandma. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel less than. That was never my intention. I wish we could talk sometime. I feel like we lost our way. There it was again. Feel like. Glossy sincerity with no spine. Still no, I was wrong. You didn't deserve this. It wasn't malicious, just empty. A well-polished mirror reflecting nothing. I didn't respond. That night my father emailed. The subject line was blank. The message wasn't. Marion, I'll admit this one stung. I won't lie, I read your blog. So did half the family. Your Aunt Janet's been passing it around like it's treasure. I huffed a small laugh. He continued. I wish you'd come to us before airing everything online. But I can't deny what you wrote. I failed you. We did. Your sister demanded attention. You were independent. It was easy to overlook you. That's on us. No excuse. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you find peace. Maybe one day we can rebuild something. Dad. I stared at the words. Not perfect. Not a cure. But the first time in my 22 years that my father had admitted fault without a fight, without minimizing, without pointing fingers anywhere but himself. It didn't heal everything, but it was real. The last email came from my mother. I almost didn't open it, but something in my chest insisted I should. Marion, I've been thinking about your message for days. I knew you felt hurt, but I didn't understand how deep it went. Cassidy always needed more from us emotionally, socially, financially. You never asked for anything. I thought I was giving you what you wanted, space, independence. I see now I was wrong. I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try, if you'll let me. I closed the laptop and let silence fill the room. Did her message change the past? No. Did it undo the years? No. But for the first time, they saw me. And that was enough. That weekend, I returned to Grandma's house with mulch gardening gloves and hedge trimmers. She insisted she could help, but her knees argued louder. So I worked while she sat under a sun hat on the porch, humming along with an old radio. For hours, I pulled weeds, clipped branches, and uncovered soil that hadn't seen daylight in years. The neighbors walked by, waving. One leaned over the fence. Glad to see someone finally helping her, she said. That family of hers is always too busy. I smiled without looking up. Not anymore. By sunset, the sky was sherbet orange, painting Grandma's roses in soft gold. She brought out lemonade in her favorite pitcher, the chipped one with blue flowers. We sat on the porch, sipping in companionable silence. I still can't believe you did all this, she said softly. Paid off the house, came back, stayed. I didn't do it to impress them, I said. I did it because you were the only one who ever made me feel like I mattered. She reached for my hand, her fingers warm and worn. You always mattered, baby. Sometimes people just don't know how to show it. Sometimes they don't want to. I nodded, watching a robin hop across the yard. She squeezed my hand once more. I'm proud of you, Marion. I swallowed against the warmth rising in my throat. I'm proud of me, too. Driving back to Austin that night, my phone buzzed. A message from a cousin I barely knew. Hey, I saw your post. I always felt invisible, too. Reading yours helped me finally talk to my parents. Just wanted to say thank you. I let the message sit there for a moment, glowing in the dark car. Not validation, not victory. Something deeper. Connection. The kind I'd spent my life craving without knowing how to name it. There is something powerful, quietly powerful about telling the truth without asking anyone to change, without trying to control the outcome, without begging to be seen. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their applause. I didn't need their apologies. I had built a life where their recognition no longer determined my worth. My absence echoed in their lives, now more loudly than my presence ever had. And that I realized as the Austin skyline came into view was the truest, gentlest form of justice. Not revenge, not retaliation, not leveling the scales. Just living so fully, so honestly, that the people who once dismissed you finally feel the emptiness of the space you no longer fill. And now, they feel it.